Good morning, everybody. My name is Piero Marlia from LiveEO, and with me there is Seline from LRQA, Advisory in ESG, and we're happy to welcome you today for this webinar, an advanced version of an informational webinar on EUDR. Why is it advanced? Because today we don't talk so much about EUDR as an introduction, as a challenge, but rather we go more focused, and we will talk about evidence collection, risk assessment, even mitigation, and we will talk about solutions to help you get started on your compliance journey, because the deadline obviously it's coming, and many of you are affected by this regulatory change. So the next things that I wanted to cover were housekeeping rules. You can submit your questions in the bottom right corner with the feature that you see here displayed. We will get to them at the end of the presentation. So yeah, please don't be shy, because I know that many of you have specific questions and tough ones, and we're ready to answer them. What I also wanted to cover is we've reserved 1 hour today, but we're probably going to be a bit quicker, closer to 30-40 minutes. So in case you want to stretch after this call and take some time, there's going to be definitely a slot in between the end of the call and the end of the slot. And then the call today is recorded, so you're going to receive it in our follow-up. So not necessarily you'll have to take notes, because everything and the slides will be included as well. Perfect. So we can move ahead, and I will introduce a bit more thoroughly myself, and then hand it over to Seline, and we'll tell you what our respective companies do. I'm Piero Marlia. Once again, I'm the commercial director of TradeAware. That's the end-to-end EUDR solution that LiveEO launched a couple of months ago. And Seline, over to you.
Thank you, Piero. Hi, I'm Seline. I'm Sustainable Supply Chain Consultant in LRQA's advisory team in Europe. I'm based in Frankfurt, and at LRQA, I support clients from various industries in establishing sound human rights and environmental due diligence, and also risk management systems. And yeah, happy to be joining you, Piero, for today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Seline. So what you'll be hearing today essentially is sets of solutions to both evidence collection and risk assessment and mitigation, both from the advisory side of things that Seline will cover, as well as the software and automation side, which I will cover instead. Now we can proceed, and I want to cover essentially a little more about TradeAware. It's a platform, self-service, that already over 250 companies signed up to begin their journey and initial steps. In fact, evidence collection being the first in just last couple of months. At this moment, we've registered users, companies in every single continent, and it's 16 countries that have been to date represented. Now, the goal of TradeAware is to enable EUDR compliance, which we acknowledge is a big change, right? It includes a lot of requirements, both geospatial, legal, and at times even integration. And so we know that the bar is high, and many companies require a dedicated solution. So to help you on that journey, we've launched this solution that can ensure deforestation-free supply chains, and also avoid some of the negative consequences that a poor compliance can lead your business to. And so we're going to also go through some of the problems that evidence collection and risk assessment pose for the business. Perfect. We can then move ahead. Now, these are really the 6 steps that we have seen our customers are going through or have to go through to comply with EUDR. Everything starts from usually a supply chain system, an ERP system that TradeAware typically integrates into to pull supplier level information if possible. And from then on, what happens is the journey continues onto TradeAware. And 2, 3, and 4 are really the steps that many of you are starting to take now and over the course of the summer as well. We are going to talk about 2, 3, 4. So we will stop before the creation of the due diligence statement and the upload into the EU information system. And we're going to go deeper into these 2, 3, and 4. So articles 9, 10, and 11 of the text of the law. Perfect. So we can go ahead, and this is the quick agenda. We're basically done with step 1, and I'll hand it over to Seline in a moment to cover how LRQA is offering solutions on these 2, 3 steps, actually, evidence collection, assessment, and mitigation. And then I'll continue with how the software side of things takes place, and then we'll get to you for your questions and wrap up on next steps on how to start on your compliance journey. Perfect. Over to you, Seline.
Thank you, Piero. And before we look at the core aspects to consider when setting up the EUDR-aligned due diligence system, just a very few words on LRQA for those of you who are not yet familiar with our services. Some of you may actually still know us under Elevate, being one of the global leaders for independent social but also environmental supply chain assessments with over 10 years of experience. And last year, we then successfully completed the merger with LRQA, which is a leading global assurance partner, bringing together experts in compliance, supply chain, cybersecurity, and ESG. So we have our global ESG advisory teams. That's also the team that I'm part of, in which we then support companies with the implementation of corporate due diligence processes and also with the development of responsible sourcing programs. And we also have our programs and assessment teams where we really have the boots on the ground and are able to support suppliers and assess risk exposure in the regions. Now, I assume most of our attendees for today's webinar have already a good understanding of the EUDR's general scope and obligations. If not, do not hesitate to reach out afterwards and we'll be happy to provide further insights on that. But you, I assume, will know that in order to provide the due diligence statement in the end for each of your in-scope products, you are required to implement and properly document and maintain as well a due diligence system consisting of 3 dimensions, as Piero already mentioned: information gathering, risk assessment, and risk mitigation. So we'll focus especially on that part. And when it comes to information gathering and risk assessment, what this means in practice is first and foremost gathering and handling quite a lot of data. So we can move to the next slide, and you'll see that Article 9 of the EUDR specifies exactly which kind of information needs to be collected per product. So that includes data on the product's quantity and type, on the product's countries of origins, and especially on the exact geolocations of the plot of land where the relevant commodities have been cultivated, and then also any other information that helps to show that the product complies with the EUDR. And in addition, and we can move to the next, Article 10 of the EUDR defines additional criteria that need to be considered within the risk assessment. And with those criteria come in an additional range of different information that also needs to be collected and then evaluated. So here comes in, for example, the presence of indigenous peoples or concerns in relation to corruption and a lack of law enforcement in the country. And based on all this information gathered, you then are required to evaluate whether there is a risk that land has been deforested after December 2020 to produce your product, and that local laws have not been complied with. So that is kind of like the core requirements you have to comply with in light of information gathering and risk assessment. Now we can move to the next slide. Gathering all this necessary information can be quite a daunting task. Most companies, let's be honest here, still have very little visibility into their supply chains, especially beyond Tier 1. And the less transparent the supply chain, the more challenging it is to achieve this necessary product traceability, all the way back to the plots of land where the relevant commodities have been cultivated. Now, there are, of course, tracing technologies out there, DNA markers, for example, but these can be quite costly to implement and require bigger investments to really ensure that they're applied throughout the supply chain. And then next, if you get information from your suppliers, this may not always be sufficiently complete or adequate. So they may not really know what exactly that information is for, and the information they provide may be diverging, or it is unclear whether the geo-coordinates are really precise if the overall context is missing. And by that time, you will have quite a lot of data to handle, to review, to document, to verify. And getting a grasp at all this can be very challenging, especially if you then also have difficulties securing the internal capacities in your company. And to be very clear here, setting up an EUDR-aligned due diligence system is not a task that can be done on the side, so to say. We've just been talking to a company recently that is planning to actually create positions of 2 to 3 full-time employees just to manage the EUDR due diligence system. Now, with all that in mind, what then can be done to establish a strong due diligence system? As mentioned, in light of the complexity of the task, it is very crucial to clearly structure and lay out what needs to be done by whom and how. And ideally, you leverage already existing internal processes. So to start with, we at LRQA, we always recommend to be very clear about how exactly you are affected by the EUDR, and also check which processes you already have in place to draw on. So you may have been doing a risk assessment under the German Supply Chain Act already, or you want to make sure your processes are aligned with the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive in the future. You may already have an SAQ that you're sending out to suppliers, asking for certificates, etc., and that gives already a lot of valuable information to use. So that said, we really recommend to make sure that you know how and where you can use what is there to really reduce your own efforts and also avoid bombarding suppliers with various different tasks. And part of this is also building up knowledge and capacities internally so that everyone knows what is going on, what will be required from them throughout the process. And while that is important, kind of like as the beginning or as the starting point, we also recommend to continuously and throughout the process always check, try out how can the processes be enhanced, simplified, where are the synergies, where do I need to train people internally, externally, etc. And of course, we're happy to support you in all this and create this clarity for you with a set of actionable tasks. Then starts the phase of designing and implementing the actual processes together and evaluate the information that I mentioned, and also to derive the relevant measures that help mitigate risks. And depending on the complexity of your product portfolio and supplier base, we do recommend to follow a risk-based approach here to really identify the priority group of suppliers or priority supply chains. That means we can support you in assessing your suppliers' own EUDR readiness. So do they have own due diligence systems already in place? Where do they source from? Other red flag sourcing countries? And also in light of your own spend volumes, we can help you prioritize efforts and identify where it's most important to start with the outreach, with an additional level of verification or even escalation. And getting the information from your supplier base usually involves sending out SAQs. This can be done manually or through automated solutions like the one from LiveEO that Piero will tell you more about. But what is also required is really making sure that you train your suppliers on what kind of information they need to provide to make sure you get the information you need. For the risk assessment, you may want to gather additional third-party data, and you may need to define and document the process to make sure you really can evaluate that information. And here again, we support companies in conceptually designing the process, identifying the tools and also third-party data to run the risk assessment, again, like LiveEO's Trade Aware, for example, and will help you find the tools and solutions that are most suitable to your business, especially in light of what is already in place, what kind of processes you have in place. And throughout, to ensure that the due diligence is really exercised adequately, you will need those insights from within the supply chain, and you need to engage with your suppliers. And that is especially also true when it comes to implementing the risk mitigation measures. That said, at LRQA, we support companies not only with prioritizing the actions and setting up those targeted processes, achieving clarity, we also support with the actual implementation. So including the engagement with suppliers in the regions. And you can move to the next slide. Engaging with suppliers here can mean to, of course, reach out with information requests or formulating certain expectations on due diligence in your policies in a supplier code of conduct. But it also means really supporting your suppliers in meeting your expectations by building up the necessary capacities, especially in the deeper supply chain. And with our legacy in supporting clients in responsible sourcing and the human rights due diligence, we have built up a team of globally dispersed experts that really have their boots on the ground. And we have our end-to-end EIQ platform ecosystem through which we can support and train suppliers, for example, using e-learning courses or on-site trainings. We can send people on site to assess management systems at processing units or verify information that has been gathered from the supplier. And this will actually also allow you maybe to gather additional information and insights on risk exposure and also on the effectiveness of the measures you have implemented. We have EIQ Analyze, which helps you get insights on country-level risk exposure across various E, S, and especially G indicators, and also includes a regulatory media screening of suppliers. And then we have our own ecosystem of grievance services to identify any human rights or environment-related concerns early on, especially in the supply chain. With all that being said, happy to follow up with you afterwards and provide further details, maybe also on certain aspects of that. It was kind of overview now. But yeah, for now, I'll hand back to Piero, and I'm happy to address your questions later on.
Hi, Selina. There's actually a question that we could already cover. What is an SAQ? Because it's good to fully understand your past slides.
Of course. Sorry. The SAQ means self-assessment questionnaire. So it's a questionnaire that you send out to the suppliers asking, for example, on what kind of certifications they have in place, whether they have done an audit, whether they have an own policy to prevent deforestation or violations of human rights. So yeah, self-assessment questionnaire to be sent out to the suppliers and then filled out and sent back.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, let's start now the trade-aware journey with Article 9, information requirements, which is very much about collecting evidence, right? Both polygons and legal. So we can move to the next slide. And this is our intro to trade-aware, essentially. So everything that we are capturing through this platform is either captured automatically, such as presence of forest, corruption index, country risk, and that is based on where we see that polygons that are uploaded are based, in what country they are, or they are filled out by your suppliers, sub-suppliers, and so on. And I'm going to show you how that works in just a second. But the point here is that both deforestation and legality, those are the two sides of the coin, right? And we have to capture all of this information to then eventually create the due diligence statement. So it's fundamental that it's not 95% complete, but fully complete. Otherwise, the due diligence statement could not be created, or you wouldn't be able to build a robust risk assessment and mitigation in case of audits. So all these check marks that you see here, we've organized them based on Article 9, 10, and in the two sides of the EUDR requirements. So the deforestation, so more geospatial side of things, and then the legality as well. Perfect. So with the goal clear in mind, we can proceed on to the next step, which is, of course, going deeper into the evidence collection, which is Article 9. And here, let's start with some concrete, simple, but effective ways to help you solve this first step. So we move to this first phase, and why have we chosen to build these features, these solutions? Because we've met with hundreds of companies impacted with EUDR, and they've come to us with sets of problems that make evidence collection and information requirements, Article 9, a complex task. So the first problem is the following. We can observe how difficult it is to collect a multitude of polygons from a multitude of suppliers across products, and Selina covered that part very, very well. So there's large volume, and also we don't know who has access to the entirety of the information required for EUDR. It could be you, it could be your supplier, it could be your sub-suppliers or levels below that. And so we can move to the second problem is, what you need is a way to collaborate in one platform so that you can request the information directly or indirectly to the organizations that have access to the legality or deforestation information that is crucial to complete the EUDR journey. And finally, we have observed also a challenge, right? Because suppliers can be deep, can be many levels away from you, and it's complicated to roll up the information that a sub-supplier has up to the supplier and eventually up to the buyer. So there has to be a dedicated software that takes care of this essentially network of suppliers, has them collaborate effectively, and also can structure the information flow in a way that you can complete your picture and complete Article 9. Perfect. So let's move to the first of the solutions that we've put in place. I won't touch on the even simpler parts of how we automatically populate the forest index, the corruption index, the country risk level, because those we can infer from where your polygons are essentially based. So I'm going to go to the next solution, which is the ability that our customers have to delegate the evidence collection exercise to their suppliers. Suppliers, in turn, have the same ability to invite their own suppliers. So indirectly, you, via TradeAware, will be able to access the entirety, or at least all the suppliers that are required for you to have a complete mapping of polygons, as well as a complete answer to the legality questions that combined make up the due diligence statement. Everything that I've just described is entirely for free, and because we've observed how important this is to simplify, to lower the adoption barrier, and to start bringing in all your collaborators and suppliers and fostering this virtuous cycle. The beauty here is that whatever you lack or your suppliers lack, your sub-suppliers can be invited by your suppliers to complement and provide essentially what you're lacking, so that you can complete your mosaic of legality and polygon information. And effectively, the platform allows you to roll up and link the information that your suppliers and sub-suppliers provide, so that you're going to have the full mapping and collection done in an outsourced fashion, essentially. We can move on to the next solution that we put in place, which is the ability to map precisely polygons using a drag and drop feature using the mouse with our web app. This is something that also is available to everybody, including yourselves, suppliers, and sub-suppliers. And we found that this is a simple but effective tool, especially for suppliers or users that are situated closer to the areas, closer to the land, closer to the polygons, and especially in areas that are a bit less accessible, unmapped. And by using the mouse and dragging and dropping, you can simply generate essentially a GeoJSON files at the end of this simple exercise. And then we would, after that, I will show you how we are going to monitor the risk of deforestation related to that polygon. And then an additional solution, which is instead very much appreciated by, let's say, the larger enterprises, but also lower stream, downstream players in the supply chain, is the ability to bulk upload the polygons. Essentially, we support the most common file formats, and including, of course, GeoJSON, and then essentially you can upload, and within seconds, we would map them somewhere in the world and begin the risk assessment of those polygons as well. So so this is a bulk and scalable way to get the geospatial part of Article 9 done well. Okay, so we can move now to this next solution that we put in place, which your suppliers and sub-suppliers obviously have access to, which is the ability to collect legal information with a questionnaire and with document upload. And this is important, right, for the legal part, where you want to prove your land ownership title or the proof of consultation with indigenous people, all the other sections of the EUDR. And so we've designed a legally sound questionnaire, but also user-friendly, to enable your suppliers and sub-suppliers to provide simple answers and upload supportive documentation to, in a way that it's verifiable and transparent, that they've abided by the local jurisdiction. And so, as you see, we've put in place a mosaic of solutions, both on the legal and geospatial side, to simplify this collection and collaboration among you and your suppliers. Perfect. We can move ahead with the next section, which is risk assessment and mitigation. And we can go on how essentially these, what are the challenges associated with each, and what are the ways that TradeAware offers solutions to overcome those challenges. Of course, we're moving now to step 3 and 4 according to our mapping. So let's say you're in the middle part of your EUDR compliance journey here. And we can move ahead. And this is something that it's very important to cover. In case deforestation detection is happening not so accurately, there are negative consequences that your business may be facing. Now, what does it mean, first of all, to do deforestation detection inaccurately? I prepared for you an example of actually a real case of farms. In this case, it's rubber in Thailand. And we can start essentially with the animation with the first example here. So poor or inaccurate or unsuitable technologies to detect deforestation essentially are error prone. And why so? Because the majority of solutions that exist on the market at the moment, they focus on tree cover loss. So that's essentially the detection of a change, whether there was a tree and there is no longer a tree, while still using the correct cutoff date. But that's a different task. That's not exactly what EUDR is requesting. EUDR is requesting a land use change, not tree cover loss detection. Land use change is tougher, right? Because you're telling the difference essentially between the primary forest or jungle and the in this case, it's a rubber plantation, which a machine and algorithm struggles more detecting unless it's properly trained. And so in this example, what we did is, as you can see, there are 8 polygons marked in purple, and 2 of those have been marked in red on the left-hand side because they are found by this tool to be deforested. We actually analyzed the same exact area, and if we show it, we see that these 8 polygons were actually all fine because they were all already converted to rubber plantation before the cutoff date, December 31st, 2020. And this is really important because just in this example of only 8 polygons, there's a 25% error rate. Now, imagine scaling these to hundreds of thousands or millions of polygons in case you're an enterprise and you collaborate with a multitude of suppliers and sub-suppliers. You would return at this error rate potentially hundreds of thousands of errors. And it's basically like throwing a dice unless you're doing this deforestation detection accurately. Now, the negative consequences that this can originate are shown in this box. You may unnecessarily have to renegotiate contracts with your suppliers or sub-suppliers. Farmers may be losing essentially a market access for no reason, right? Because this is a case of false positive. So they're not actually non-compliant, they're fine, but they're being told by the tool to no longer sell into Europe. So there's obviously a business disruption angle, which is the procurement renegotiation, but also an issue more on the ethical side of things of farmers that may be shut out of the market for no reason. Now, obviously, on the false negative side, there is a risk of fine, which we all know is 4% of the EU turnover. And we are seeing the false positive as even a more immediate problem because it can affect already businesses well before even the enforcement comes into play at the end of this year. And so what have we done to solve this challenge? we can move to essentially the solution side of things when it comes to risk assessment of deforestation. Straight away, we developed an algorithm that is suitable and fit for purpose, because what it's doing essentially it's land use change monitoring. And what it means is that it's trained to each commodity and each region. So it's customized to the area wherever you mark your polygons. It is not a large scale map, which usually comes as a trade-off, right? The larger the availability of the information, the less accuracy that could be. So we train it exactly to the single polygon and the areas whatever you're sourcing from, so that we can maximize the accuracy, because we've trained the algorithm to recognize what land use change means, commodity by commodity and region by region, across the world. Now, obviously, this is a continuous, never-ending effort, right? Because we're mapping millions of polygons, and essentially the results that we have generated have been consistently north of 90% in classification accuracy of the deforestation status. We have found this to be essentially best in class and would minimize the negative consequences for your business. If this methodology is adopted, we've seen essentially an error rate ranging between 20 and even up to 50%. So there's a severe reduction in errors of multiple times. Perfect. Then we move to the legality part of risk assessment and mitigation. Now, you know that especially those of you who are sourcing commodities from multiple countries, there is a myriad of legal documents and also jurisdictions here that are at play. Because you can think of a felling license in Sweden, as we are marking here, but also land ownership title in a different country, or the proof of consultation with indigenous people, or an overall assessment of whether you've respected the local legislation. No, this is tough. It's many documents, many countries, and it's difficult to collect all of that and assess them appropriately in a way that it's robust legally, in a way that it's audit proof, and allows you to have the peace of mind and also minimize any risks down the line in case you've happened not to collect or collected the wrong document from your supplier or sub-supplier. And so to put this solution in place, we've collaborated with a global law firm, CMS, which is helping us with the risk assessment and mitigation of the legal side of things, of documents. So essentially, the flow is very simple, and it works this way. So the first step is your suppliers and sub-suppliers will upload the legal documents and fill out the questionnaire that I've just showed you a few slides ago, so that they can get, let's say, Article 9, the legality side of things, done. And the information is stored in TradeAware. What happens next is TradeAware obviously stores, organizes, and scores the answers so that we can start providing the first layer of risk assessment and mitigation, inclusive of alerts, which are important for mitigation purposes. And then finally, what happens is our partner, CMS, will perform the audits of everything that has been submitted through TradeAware by your suppliers and sub-suppliers, so that you can have that peace of mind. And the way this happens is our partner has secured a global capacity, so that you're going to be able to be supported by the expert of whichever country the information is coming from, right? So whether it was Sweden, Peru, Brazil, or Ivory Coast, typical countries where the 7 commodities are coming from, there will be local expertise trained on the subject that obviously is qualified to perform a check and assess and whether and alert the supplier as well as you as a buyer that the information is complete and audit proof, obviously. Perfect. I think we've covered everything already. So this is great. We can move to the question part. So Seline, I let you manage that side of things.
Of course, sure. There have been a few questions coming in, some relating closely to the LiveEO tool and further technical details. Maybe I'll just start answering one question on the legal documents, as you were just talking about that. So the questions of whether there's a guideline on legal documents for each country, or how else we assess jurisdictional environmental compliance. I mean, I can answer from the LRQA's perspective, and Piero, you can add for your LiveEO from your LiveEO part. So what we always recommend, or I mean, in the end, you need to have the local experts, right? To know, of course, what are the different jurisdictional requirements that apply to that certain country, or in best case, also at the regional level. And to ensure compliance, what you can do is to either go to third-party indicators. So there are a lot of independent, publicly available indicators that give you an insight into general level of law enforcement that already gives you an indication, okay, if there is a law, what are the risks that this is being complied with, corruption elements, etc. But then, of course, you would also need to go on site and be very precise in terms of, does the certain production facility that you're looking at, do they have all the necessary legal permits? Do they have the environmental compliance certificates? Are there any inspection reports, an environmental impact assessment maybe that you can draw on, audit reports, etc.? So that's how we would approach this aspect of how to really ensure the environmental compliance within the deeper supply chain. Piero, I don't know if you want to add, otherwise I'll...
Yes, so from our side of things, we are marking essentially examples of documents that can help you get to compliance and satisfy those requirements. For example, a felling license or a specific document type. So at the moment, it will be a generic guideline of examples of documents, and over time we plan to localize it to single countries.
Perfect. Then we have a question on LiveEO and the technicalities here. So there was a question that on whether or how LiveEO is integrated in Green Token. I don't know, Piero, you probably know the link with respect to the SAP. So maybe you can give a short insight on how that exactly works in relation to Green Token.
Absolutely. So probably due to time, I can't talk about so much about the specific single tools, but what you've just seen, the deforestation detection side of things, we also make available into third-party tools because we are aware that we essentially want to meet customers where they are, and some of you are already using different traceability systems and supply chain risk tools, and so what you're seeing essentially is available via API. And we are capable of essentially sending back those signals of deforestation risk back to third-party platforms. Now, for a dedicated conversation on this specific tool, we can have a more customized, let's say, one-on-one talk, so we can go more into the technicalities.
Perfect. Thank you. Then there was a question on the geolocation aspect and the gathering of the polygon informations. So there was a question on the required level of accuracy for the polygon boundaries or point features required for EUDR compliance. Piero, I don't know if you want to answer to that. Maybe just the note on that one that the European Commission has just recently published further information on the information system and how that's going to work, also specifying exactly of what those polygons must contain, how many digits, etc. But Piero, I'll leave it to you.
Exactly. My answer would be rather equivalent, Selina. So I want to maybe tell the difference, right, between the 4 hectare threshold, right? If it's under 4 hectare, you can collect a point. Otherwise, you would have to map your own polygon, and you're perfectly right on the decimal points of accuracy. So we can move ahead.
Yeah. Perfect. And otherwise, we can also maybe share the link with you afterwards to that Commission update and guidance. And there was also a question, I guess it's more directed to you, Piero, as well, in terms of whether you have a mobile app available. I guess it relates to actually gathering the geo-coordinates on the sites.
Right. This is actually something that we have received a lot of demand for. We are going to offer it in the coming months down the line, not immediately for a start, because there are so many requirements that we need to fit in, obviously with the newly released instructions and the upcoming API for the EU information system. So we're focusing on the core experience to get customers compliant, and from there on we will simplify life in many more ways. So this is duly noted. Thank you for the question.
Perfect. I'm just screening through there. I think there are a lot of kind of like more technical details to LiveEO and also the application integration into companies' own IT systems. So I would suggest maybe to take these offline, Piero, for you to
similar to
answer and the follow up. Let me just further screen. A question on suppliers potentially not be willing to sharing polygons or geolocations. How is LiveEO as your tool dealing with this? Maybe you can
exactly
answer to that, and I can.
This is a top question. Yeah, I don't know, maybe Selina, you get that a lot too, but we certainly do. So what will be guaranteed by TradeAware essentially is that the buyer will be able to see the contact details and the names of their direct suppliers, obviously, but the sub-suppliers will, yes, provide the evidence, and that will be entirely transparent and visible, but will be doing so in an anonymous way. And we have found this to be an effective way to, let's say, protect the supply chain, maintain it more stable, and involve suppliers and sub-suppliers into the collaboration virtuous cycle. At the same time, we have seen a lot of incentives that suppliers and sub-suppliers have in collaborating with buyers, because essentially this is their guarantee, right, to continue operating into the EU market. So at times also education is something that is helpful, and there we both Selina and LRQA and ourselves do have the tools to help and onboard customers with training, and their suppliers as well.
Exactly. And maybe just to add in, there has been also another question somewhat related to this in terms of the risk assessment and providing the legal documents, and suppliers facing the difficulties as well to provide potential documents. So here again, this aspect of supplier engagement really comes in to make sure you not only say, okay, I require that information, but to really explain why is that needed, what is the context, what are the implications also of maybe not sharing that information, and then also see where you can really support your supplier on site to get the data, also get external support, of course, to verify and to provide guidance for this for the suppliers themselves. Perfect. In light of time, Piero, I don't know, shall we?
I would say let's say we can notify whoever doesn't have questions, or that the session would just continue just with Q&A. I think it could be worth Selina answering a few more, because there's a lot more, and I feel this is exactly what the viewers would like to understand more.
No, that's great. So there are a couple of questions, as far as I can see, on the supplier onboarding process to your tool. So how long does it take to set up the system, and then how far do you ensure suppliers are adequately onboarded?
Great question. So since this is a point solution fully dedicated to the EUDR, we've made it as simple as it could possibly be. And essentially what a buyer or / customer of ours would just require is to type in the email address of their supplier, and then click invite, and then the tool will do the rest, because an email-based invite would go out explaining the context and what is required and why it matters, and who sent the email to them, or the invite to join TradeAware. And then from then on, it's completely self-service and guided on how the supplier can simply fill out the information. So we try to make this as simple as possible. Nevertheless, we offer dedicated account management essentially for kickoff trainings for customers and their suppliers as well.
Perfect. And then there are a couple of questions concerning the integration of your system or upload of the due diligence system with the EU information system that will be developed. So maybe you can speak to that. And also the question arises whether, because of course under the EUDR, sometimes you're able to draw or rely on due diligence statements of your suppliers to then use for your own suppliers. So is there an information exchange foreseen in LiveEO as well between the due diligence statements?
So short answer is yes to both. It will be guaranteed, right? We are going to work with essentially the API specs that we are going to receive. And this is crucial, right, for all of you to comply. So we are seeing that there are customers that will require hundreds of due diligence statements. So without that automation and integration, it will be a lot of manual work that we want to automate. We want to get rid of. And so yes, this will be guaranteed, as well as let's imagine that a supplier is already working and has completed the articles 9, 10, and 11 on TradeAware, and we recognize that you've added them, you've invited them, and they're already there, right? So we'll be able to link essentially their the information that they provided, so that they don't have to do double work, and so this can facilitate lives as well.
Perfect. And there are a few questions again on pricing cost models, but I guess that's something also to share individually and offline. And there's been one question, I think, also on with respect to kind of like the upcoming timeline. There have been discussions as concerns the delay of the country risk assessment benchmarking system. So as you may know, the Commission foresees to kind of classify countries into different levels of risk. That is supposed to be integrated into the risk assessment, was announced to be ready by end of this year. But now we're already seeing, or there has been a communication that this will be delayed to sometime next year in summer. Let's see whether it comes. And there are also, of course, voices on delaying the EUDR enforcement date, given that it is quite a big challenge for many companies. So to answer the question on the likeliness here, from our perspective, that it's nevertheless very, very unlikely, given that the EUDR has already entered into force. It is applicable law, and the pure political processes in changing that enforcement date are very unlikely to happen. Perfect. We're at 45. There's one final question on the overlap in your system between EUDR and CSDDD assessment. Maybe before giving it to Piero in terms of whether there's an overlap in the trade aware tool, just to contextualize, we again really recommend to look at exactly those synergies, because for both you have to do the risk assessment, you have to exercise the supply chain due diligence, but the perspectives are slightly different in terms of EUDR, focusing very much on the product, on the commodity. Looking at the upcoming EU forced labor product ban, that a lot of synergies exist here as well. CSDDD and then also German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act focus more on the sites, on the individual suppliers. So in that sense, you always need to be a bit careful on where you can align and where the overlaps actually are. One focusing on the supplier, one coming from the product, so to say. But in terms of setting up the processes and reaching out to suppliers, getting the information, there's definitely a lot of overlap. And happy to discuss this also offline to see where you stand on that. But Piero, I don't know if you want to comment on CSDDD.
Yeah, so that's a different challenge, right? So as I said at the beginning, we think the bar is high enough, and there's so many risks of not complying enough and meeting the expectations on EUDR. So we are thinking about focusing purely for now on getting EUDR well and done for hundreds and thousands of companies this year, and then stay tuned for upcoming solutions. But this is at the moment a bit more pressing and what we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
I think we covered most of the core topics, themes of questions. I'll leave it to you for the final words.
Yeah, let's do it. So essentially, thank you very much. There's so many more questions that hopefully we've covered fully or partially, and we invite you to essentially take these following actions now. So if we move to our final slide, yes. So basically, we have a self-service tool with even a free tier that we are continuously enriching with new features, because we keep getting more demand for more free, ready to start solutions. And so essentially Article 9 and the overall upload of legal and polygons will be offered entirely for free. Now, we are seeing a timeline of the majority of you having to prepare within the next 2-3 months, and that's what we are seeing actually often suppliers take to fully provide this information for you, obviously to educate them, for you to bring them over and collaborate with you. So in terms of timeline, this is what we are seeing projects are taking in year -1 of EUDR compliance, obviously. And so the final call out essentially is obviously to reach out to Selina and myself for a dedicated conversation where we can talk to you essentially about how Selina's advisory work can help you lay the foundations of your EUDR compliance journey, and then how our trade-aware solution can help you outsource, automate, and scale your efforts to save you time and minimize risks. So I want to thank you once again for the attention and all the questions that you sent over. We'll be, again, following up with this material and the recording, and we're looking forward to having a dedicated conversation. So over to you, Selina, for a bye-bye.
No, I fully agree. Thank you so much for your participation. Great questions, and looking forward to the exchange offline. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ciao, ciao.